Hello, my name is Billy Mullins. This is my video presentation on scholarly survey. And for this presentation, I chose three articles, Andrew Buchanan, Timothy Clarke, and Ken Fuchsman. The first one is talking about the globalization of the Second Civil War, or the Second World War, and how it encompassed the entire globe, brought all nations into conflict with one another, and truly made one of the world's first global conflicts. And the second one, Our Hearts and Brains Are Like Paper We Never Forget, is about Timothy Clarke discussion of the Indigenous people who many times were oppressed and forced into military service for various factions of the war. And then the third one was Turning Point: When and How and Why Killing Civilians in War Surpassed Military Fatalities in World War II. And I'll try and tie these three together with a overview of War Without Borders. You're dealing with civilian targeting, global conflict, and indigenous agencies during the Civil War, and how they, or during the World War I, I'm sorry, and how they all tie into one another in one big thread. And World War I or World War II was specific in how civilians were targeted for the first time. You take a controversial act such as dropping the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These were primarily civilian targets, although they did have military supply infrastructure in them. These were going to consist of primarily civilian deaths, but they were going to be useful in breaking the will of the Japanese to continue to fight and forcing a surrender, knowing that the United States had overwhelming firepower and superiority. The Japanese had no idea how many nuclear bombs America possessed at that time. So when the U.S. bluffed them into thinking, well, these bombs are going to keep coming, they're going to keep coming, the Japanese knew there were no opportunities to continue the fight, that they were going to get no better settlement than what was offered to them. Same way when the Japanese invaded many civilian areas in the Southeast Asia, they would impress many of the indigenous population either into service. They were going to build their roads, they were going to build their facilities, or they were going to provide auxiliary forces for the Japanese, if not slave labor. And the indigenous people of these areas did not forget what was done to them by the Japanese. And then the globalization of the World War II was everybody was involved in some way, shape, or form, even if not directly involved in the fighting. Indirectly, all nations were brought together by this conflict, and the ending of it with the atomic bombs and targeting civilians showed that there would be a new way of warfare going forward. With the MAD doctrine, mutually assured destruction, between the Soviet Union and the United States, it was understood that the vast majority of the deaths of any future nuclear conflict was going to be that of civilians. Cities were going to be targeted. Population centers were going to be targeted. Decimation on a scale that the world had never imagined was going to occur if a thermonuclear war occurred between the Soviet Union and the United States. The precursor of this was World War II. Events like the bombing of Dresden before the atomic bombs, the terror bombing of London, these all preceded this new way of warfare where civilians were going to be a primary target. And it also worked as a primary deterrence for warfare going forward, because people knew the devastation that they would face if a conflict broke out. Thank you. Have a great day.